When Tira Miraborg made the ultimate sacrifice in the Reichstadt system in October 31st of 3050 by flying her damaged Shalone into the bridge of the Direwolf, she triggered a cascading series of events which radically changed human history, not just in the Inner Sphere, but among the clans as well. The death of IlClan Leo Showers on the bridge of the Direwolf forced a halt to the seemingly unstoppable clan onslaught across the Federated Commonwealth, Rosselhog Dominion, and Draconis Combine, as clan leaders, along with other blood-named warriors, were forced by tradition to return to clan space to elect a new leader. This bought a valuable year for the houses of the Inner Sphere, mercenary units, and even the wily Comstar to rally and prepare for a more cohesive defense once Operation Revival resumed. One of the consequences of this return included reinforcement of clan forces from every source possible. The clans had vastly underestimated how much equipment, ammunition, and warm bodies were needed to launch a successful campaign against the entire Inner Sphere, and by 3051, every invading clan was scrambling. Clan Jade Falcon had been on the receiving end of multiple learning opportunities, including the defeat on Twycross, and the leadership was eager to press the scientist caste to start delivering the latest and greatest to reinforce the Falcon Tumen. The Night Gyr program featured some cutting-edge technology which, had it panned out, could have given the Jade Falcons an edge not just over the Lyrans but also in the ever-present compulsion to outmaneuver the other clans. The 75-ton Night Gyr was a gamble that both the Scientist caste and Jade Falcon warriors hoped would turn the tide back in their favor. Let's see how that turned out. Joanna did not like this new type of mech, the Night Gyr. It was too fancy for its own good. Equipped with a new laser-based heatsink technology that kept it going longer during a battle, it also had a distracting aura of light around it during night combat as laser light bounced off cockpit viewports and other openings. In action, it looked more like a walking monument than a battle mech. This particular Night Gyr had apparently seen some heavy battle here on Coventry. It was scarred, dented, twisted, and generally unfunctional. Good salvage, good riddance, she thought. Freebirth by Robert Thurston. When Jade Falcon scientists laid down the proverbial keel for the Night Gyr, the goal was to create a powerful 75-ton battle mech that could rival or even surpass its peers. That was a tall order, as the angry kitty in the room, Timberwolf, could put up some pretty impressive numbers. The comparison is necessary for both context, and everybody loves it when the Jade Falcons and Wolves fight, even if we all know how that usually turns out. Before we get into the specs, one of the few things that most people know about the Night Gyr already was that it was a testbed for the experimental heatsink design, which converted the heat generated by the mech into visible light, which was then vented, for a lack of a better word, from the Omnimech, creating what has been described as a light show for anyone alive to witness it. I bring it up because we really need to pad the runtime on this thing for another $3 in ad revenue. While normally it would be a bad thing to call attention to yourself on the battlefield like you're a Pink Floyd fan at the regional planetarium, it's pretty forgivable for mech-on-mech combat, since battle mechs have a host of different sensors like infrared that make mechs light up like Christmas trees, no matter how you shed your heat or what color you paint them. Ideally either black or a slightly darker black. The Night Gyr's 75 tons of light show and vinegar was constructed around a JF7 light endosteel frame wrapped around a 300 JF extra light fusion engine. Just 2 steps into the process here and the Omnimech has already diverged from the norm. The 64 km/h top speed set the Night Gyr considerably behind the norm for clan battlemechs of the time period. While the cost of the 4.6 movement profile would be felt on the quickly changing battlefield, the value of that 10 tons of mass saved from using the less powerful engine was hard to quantify, but we'll take a crack at it anyway. An additional departure from the Timberwolf was the addition of 4 JF standard jump jets to the Night Gyr's legs, partially compensating for the reduced mobility from the engine. Once the 11.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor was bolted on around the gyro cockpit and 12 double heat sinks, that left a glorious 38 tons of mass devoted to pod space across 25 critical locations. This contrasts with the Timberwolf's 27.5 tons of pod space across 29 critical locations. The difference in criticals is entirely covered by the Night Gyr's 4 jump jets. It's also necessary to point out that the 3 fewer hard-built double heat sinks in the Night Gyr also nudge the numbers by 3 tons. The end result is an Omni-Mech that had just a half-ton less armor than the Timberwolf, but traded speed in favor of agility and pod space. Something opportunity cost, right? The potential to cram some very powerful weaponry into this plodding menace is very on-brand for the Jade Falcons. Remember, this is in years before the transition to faster totem mechs with claws and partial wings. The primary configuration sets a high standard for damage output thanks to twin extended-range particle projection cannons set into the left arm and an Ultra AC-10 autocannon installed into the left arm. Fed by 2 tons of ammunition, the UAC-10 had 20 rounds to fire out to 18 hexes. The trio of hard-hitting weapons could easily strip the armor of any mech under the assault class, and even threaten those heavier mechs if the Night Gyr wasn't immediately dealt with. If that isn't enough, starting at 12 hexes, the trio of medium pulse lasers offered their accurate 7 points of damage apiece. Scattered between the side torsos and the head, the Night Gyr is still a threat even if you manage to take both arms off. Thankfully, the last 8 tons of mass were dedicated to double heat sinks, bringing the total on the prime configuration to 20. This allowed the Night Gyr to fire both ERPPCs and the Ultra Autocannon while on the run, and still not slip over into the red. An Alpha Strike that included double firing the UAC and the medium pulse lasers on the run pushed the prime 10 into the red, but that sort of behavior is as sometimes treated best. The info on the enemy mechs came through and started displaying on her heads-up display. 2 75-ton Night Gyrs and a trio of 20-ton Ion Sparrows. Seemed like they were all mechs stolen from the factory zone and only sported gray primer. The Night Gyrs were deadly to any of Katie's mechs. Dual PPCs mounted in their left arm and an LB-20X autocannon in the right meant they could crack open any of the lighter foxes like a nut. Lone Wolf and Fox, Shrapnel number 13, by Brian Young. The Night Gyrs that were packed into dropships for the return to the Inner Sphere arrived just in time for the participation in the trials on Tukayyid, which of course went really well for Clan Jade Falcon. Though not due to any fault in the Night Gyr's performance, they still had a pretty rough time. Though still quite rare up through the Refusal War, the Night Gyr became a staple of Clon Martha Pride's revitalized Falcon Tumen. Though it should be noted that the fancy light-based double heatsinks ended up being swapped out for standard double heatsink design, as the technology proved to be a dead end. If the prime configuration wasn't your cup of tea, there were of course a nice collection of other standard options. The A configuration featured a hefty Ultra AC-20 autocannon in the right arm which could feed from 15 shots of ammunition stored in the right torso. While it did carry a large pulse laser in its left arm, which technically counts as a long-range weapon, the A config definitely leaned into short-range brawling thanks to 3 medium pulse lasers split 2 into the left arm and 1 into the head. And of course, 2 Streak SRM-6s split between the side torsos really reinforces that argument. They fed from a single ton of ammunition in the left torso. It's quite convenient that all the weapons except for the large pulse laser share a 4-8-12 range profile. Makes for easy math in the moment. The 4 additional double heat sinks brought the total to 16, which was plenty, as a full Alpha Strike on the run only left the A config at 7 heat into the red. However, if you double fire that UAC-20, it would be 14. There's no ammo risk at 14, but you won't be doing much the next turn, especially if you roll poorly on that 4+ shutdown toss of the dice. While the prime configuration is a great general purpose build, the A really highlights just how much damage you can do with 38 tons of short-range clan weaponry. This thing eats faces. If you prefer to do your damage from a more polite and prim and proper distance, the B configuration may be a viable option. The build relies upon the power of dual Gauss rifles split between the arms that do the lion's share of the damage. With just 3 tons of ammunition, the B's Mechwarrior would need to be frugal with their shots. Backing up the Gauss rifles and offering up the possibility of doing some fire support against aerial targets, twin LB2X autocannons were installed into the side torsos along with 1 ton of ammunition in the left torso. They could add their very modest damage out to an incredible 30 hexes with medium range starting at 20. Unfortunately, the B config is the first hiccup in what will be a very strong showing in the list of official configurations. Almost any other weapon set other than the LB2Xs would have been better for the B so long as an extra 4th ton of Gauss ammunition could be added. The LB2X just doesn't bring enough fire to the fun to justify eating up the remaining tonnage for this Night Gyr. But what do I know, I'm just a frog in a suit. The alternative long-range C configuration might give us some renewed hope. The C config featured dual ER large lasers set into the right arm backed up by a trio of Ultra AC2 autocannons in the left arm. 2 ER medium lasers split between the left torso and head provided mid and short range support fire, and all of the weaponry benefited from a right torso mounted targeting computer. 6 additional double heat sinks allowed for sustained fire at long range while on the move without any issue. Normally, I wouldn't be a big fan of the Ultra AC2s, but when teaming up with the ER large lasers at nearly the same range profile in the targeting computer, then neurons start to fire. With 2 tons of ammunition, the UAC2s aren't in any danger of going silent. Overall, I think the C configuration works. I'd put it up there with the Prime and the A for usefulness and fun. The last of the official 3052 Night Gyr configurations was the D, and it takes on the role of fire support in a big way. 4 long-range missile 20 racks were set into the Omni-Mech, 1 in each arm and side torsos. Each launcher was supported by an Artemis 4 fire control system to increase the number of missiles that strike a target. The 4 launchers could feed from 6 tons of ammunition, which added up to a paltry 9 shots per launcher. Choose your targets wisely, Mechwarrior. Thankfully, even if the missiles do run out, the D config can still participate in all the reindeer games thanks to the center torso mounted large pulse laser and head mounted medium pulse laser. While obviously it wouldn't put up big numbers with dry ammo bins, it's always nice when a mech isn't completely taken out of a fight. Overall, the D configuration is a functional but not exceptional fire support Omni-Mech. With its 12 double heat sinks, the Night Gyr D can fire all 4 missile launchers while on the run and not get too warm, but alpha strikes, including both pulse lasers, can leave the cockpit a s'mores cooking temperature pretty quickly. The Night Gyr slammed down in the middle of a street, its jarring impact scarcely cushioned by a meter of dust. Held in place by the 5-point harness clamped over his sternum, Chistu instantly crouched the huge blocky machine and launched it in another leap. The hot lust to be at his foes, tearing out their throats and tasting their tainted blood, overpowered concerns of heat management. Besides, he had yet to fire his weapons. That changed as his battlemech descended into the very fringe of the rubbled town. As Arrow 4 missiles streaked overhead, from behind him, a half-dozen conventional infantry in green and black Falcon battle dress bolted from a small ruined structure to his left. Striding his battlemech forward, he swiveled its torso to bear on them. Green beams lanced from the Night Gyr's torso and head. Where the medium laser spears touched running soldiers, the enemy simply vanished into puffs of black greasy smoke and pink-tinged steam. A Rending of Falcons by Victor Milan. Besides its presence in the clan Jade Falcon Tumen, the Night Gyr was spotted in small numbers among the other clans either through trade, theft, or salvage. The most prominent use I was able to find in the available documents was among Khan Osis's elite Omni-Mech bodyguard star, which defended the IlClan during Clan Smoke Jaguar's infamous forced expulsion from the Inner Sphere and eventual destruction by Task Force Serpent. Because someone will ask, the star consisted of a direwolf, a warhawk, cauldronborn, a stormcrow, and a Night Gyr. That's one heck of a star. Other clans used the design well into the 3070s, including the Star Adders, Cloud Cobras, and Goliath Scorpions, though the Night Gyr production lines on Ironhold would not survive the Wars of Reaving. They were rendered into scrap in 3076. Production would eventually continue, but within the Inner Sphere. In one curious side note, Night Gyrs, presumably taken as loot from the Smoke Jaguars, were spotted in some House Davion command lances late in the clan invasion era. Specifically, the B configuration was quite popular. In 3061, the first official configuration that featured the advanced tactical missile system was spotted. The E-config was primarily built to feature pulse lasers, with 2 larges split between the arms and 6 mediums evenly distributed between the arms and the center torso. A standard SRM-6 launcher was set into the head and fed from a single ton of ammunition in the right torso. Finally, the ATM-6 makes its appearance, rounding out the build along with 2 tons of ammunition which could be tailored to the Mechwarrior's need. 6 additional heat sinks partially mitigated the heat generated by the plethora of pulse lasers, but it still required some heat management on the day. Though with that warning out of the way, it would be a lot of fun to get into SRM range with the E-config and just let loose with everything, which could do up to 92 damage to a target. Come here, little Shadowhawk, I want to show you something. The Night Gyrs opened fire, their PPCs picking at Evan and Katie, coloring the battlefield in sizzling blue-white light. Rhiannon's Mechwarrior fired back at them from the road with her own PPCs, her longest-range weapons. Nyx fired his too, with his Griffin's single PPC. The engagement zone was nothing short of dangerous. Arky launched a volley of long-range missiles across the road, and they crackled against the Night Gyr's armor. Of all of the Fox Patrol mechs, he was the only one to score a hit, the PPC beams missing on both sides of the fight. Lone Wolf and Fox, Shrapnel number 13 by Brian Young. Just 1 year later, in 3062, we finally get our first heavy laser configuration in the form of the Night Gyr H. This is a one-thing from each box build that featured a Gauss rifle in the right arm, an Ultra AC-10 autocannon in the left arm, and a heavy large laser in the left torso. It also carried a medium pulse laser in the head, but no one's looking at that thing, so let's try to focus a bit. Sheesh. For those who need the refresher, the heavy large laser does 16 damage out to 15 hexes at the cost of 4 tons for the laser and 18 heat generated per shot. Thankfully, the H configuration has 5 extra double heat sinks to help wick away that heat, and it was a blessing that the other 2 primary weapons weren't big heat generators. At a glance, the mishmash of weapons on the H configuration might seem a little ill-suited for the Avengers-style team-up, but in this case the range profiles don't diverge too much. Between 10 and 15 hexes, the Night Gyr H could hammer a target for 16, 15, 10, and then 10 damage again, before even touching the medium pulse lasers. If you're still not sold on it, perhaps you could be tempted with the right torso-mounted ECM suite, which makes the H configuration our first Operation Sneaky Sneak Night Gyr of the day. I'm surprisingly a fan of the H config, though let me know if I'm way off base here. It definitely flies in the face of my normal distaste for kitchen sink builds. As Chistu's thermal gauges redlined, the 2 machines collided. Just before impact, he turned his torso counterclockwise to slam the lesser battlemech with the big humped armor housing that shielded his shoulder actuator. Momentum told. The 50-ton machine fell with an almost balletic slowness to the ground. It struck with an impact Chistu felt in his tailbone. Raising a huge foot, he smashed it down on the cockpit of the supine battlemech. Once, twice, 3 times. As he would stamp upon a noxious insect. A Rending of Falcons by Victor Milan. By 3069, the Night Gyr was due for another official configuration, and sure enough, Salvation arrived wielding a Hyper-Assault Gauss rifle. The F configuration featured 2 of them, a HAG-30 and a HAG-20 split between the right and left arms. The HAG-20 fed from 3 tons of ammunition, stored 2 in the left arm and 1 in the center torso. The HAG-30 could chew through 4 tons of ammunition set into the right torso. Don't forget that Clan Omnimechs have built-in case, so both those arms in the F config are protected. The HAGs operate like gigantic Gauss shotguns, which pepper a target with smaller munitions. Think LB-10X autocannon munitions over the standard. Their ability to travel out to 24 hexes at long range and hit medium range at 15 makes the weapon a powerful tool for catching mechs off guard. The F configuration's rifles were further bolstered by a targeting computer in the left torso, which improved their accuracy. Aiding the Night Gyr in the mid and short ranges, 2 ER medium lasers split between the right torso and head could do their good work. And finally, an ECM suite in the center torso could help keep the Mechwarrior inside alive by filling the enemy's sensors with Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas on repeat. That's how I assume ECM works. Don't fact check me. I don't have much more to say about the Night Gyr F except that the HAGs can be quite fun, and this is a good opportunity to try out 2 of them. Go wild, you have my blessing. It was a banner year in the Night Gyr household in 3074 as the Night Gyr X received multiple new technologies. The most notable, and possibly the loudest, were twin rotary AC-5 autocannons split between the mech's arms, which fed from 6 tons of ammunition in the side torsos. The autocannons were backed up by a pair of Streak LRM-10 launchers split between the side torsos, which shared a single ton of Case 2 protected ammunition in the center torso. Finally, an emotional support micro-pulse laser in the head provided the warm comfort one needs on a cold winter evening. The X's rotary autocannons and Streak LRMs share a range profile out to 21 hexes, and those AC-5s can leave a mark if the user goes all in and lets the lead fly. The downside for the X was that it was very ammo dependent. 60 rounds can go quickly if you're laying on the trigger. That would probably be the best plan, as walking around with 7 tons of ammunition in your torso for too long is a recipe for disaster. A Night Gyr in Martha's Star targeted an untouched shootist, bringing all of its weapons to bear. The 2 large lasers that made up the mech's right forearm splashed their beams over the shootist. One scored the armor on the heavyset mech's centerline, while the other disintegrated the armor on its head. A shower of sparks from the cockpit signaled the failure of some system or other, but the mech did not go down. The 2 small autocannons that fired each nicked up the armor on the shootist's arms. The Night Gyr's medium lasers hit with their ruby beams even as the shootist fired its weapons. One of the mediums boiled more armor off the mech's right arm, but the other one bathed the mech's head with a bloody beam that obliterated the structure, both cockpit and pilot vanishing in 1 hellish second. Prince of Havoc by Michael A. Stackpole. The 2 most recent Night Gyr configurations arrived way down the timeline in the 3140s, where wolves are now crusaders and the Jade Falcons are unhinged psychopaths. Most of them, anyway. The Night Gyr T configuration represented a return to a more balanced build. 2 ERPPCs in the left arm provided an all-ranges punch, while a right arm-mounted LB-20X autocannon made closing on the mech a very dangerous risk. 3 tons of ammunition stored in the right torso made the autocannon dangerous for more than a couple of warm-up shots. Finally, 3 medium pulse lasers set into the side torsos and head offered their reliable damage. 5 additional double heat sinks made firing both the ERPPCs on the run a heat-negative experience, and laying off one of those PPCs while firing everything else in a short range near Alpha Strike works nearly as well. In comparison to a previous few configurations, the T is pretty meat and potatoes, and that's not a bad thing. Paul activated a pair of short-range missiles in the shoulder mounts of his suit and aimed at the right knee and thigh of the Goliath Scorpion Omnimech. The missiles snaked through the air, along with others launched from his star, and slammed into the Night Gyr. 2 went high, hitting it in the hip and torso, and 1 went wide, but the others found their mark. The black-painted mech with brilliant orange designs concealed how bad the damage was, other than sheared-off armor plates. 1 plate near the knee was peeled back like a banana skin. The Night Gyr paused its advance, pivoting at the waist toward Paul's position. To him, it was as if they had angered the warrior by daring to strike at his mech. The enemy unleashed its ultra-class autocannon on the elementals to his right, killing Amon with a direct hit that engulfed his armor in a furious black and orange explosion. Forever Faithful by Blaine Lee Pardoe. The most recent official Night Gyr configuration on the timeline is the G, and it's a bit of a firebug, so let's dive in. The 2 ERPPCs split between the arms are no surprise, but that's where the straight and narrow ends. Each of the PPCs was paired with a PPC capacitor to significantly boost the weapon's damage. To bolster long-range damage and possibly do some anti-air or crit-seeking, 2 LB-5X autocannons joined the PPCs. They each had their own 1 ton of dedicated ammunition, so good times had by all. For close-range conflict, de-escalation, and incineration, 3 ER flamers were installed into the side torsos and the open head critical. Is this an emotional support ER flamer? Can I get a ruling, Mini-Frog?
I will allow it.
4 additional double heat sinks bring the total to 16, which makes running and gunning with the 2 ERPPCs a heat-neutral proposition. Finally, the last new addition to the Night Gyr G was a supercharger in the center torso, which allowed the mech to briefly boost up to a 484 movement profile. The G configuration's powerful weapons, mixed with the supercharger which can compensate for the mech's worst drawback, makes it a powerful contender in the Night Gyr pantheon of official configurations. One of the medium pulse lasers sent a ruby hail that devoured the Grim Reaper's right leg, while the other one chewed through more of the midline structural support members. The Grim Reaper, missing the right half of its body, spun around and slammed into the ground, face down, trapping the pilot in the cockpit. Another Night Gyr oriented on the untouched Black Knight and fired. The Gauss rifles built into each arm spat out silver balls that smashed into the Black Knight. One pulverized armor on the right flank, while the other blasted away half the armor on its right arm. The Comstar mech retained its feet, but the assault staggered it back several steps. Prince of Havoc by Michael A. Stackpole. The future of the Night Gyr is a bit up in the air at the dawn of the IlClan era. Though it is no longer produced among the clan homeworlds, production does continue at Eadeh at the CJF Factory Zone 4, along with other mechs like the Ion Sparrow and Hyrofalcon. However, with the collapse of the Clan Jade Falcon occupation zone following Malvina's burnout on Terra, Eadeh is not held by the Jade Falcons, but by the Eadeh Mercantile League. While it is safe to assume that existing production lines will keep pumping out battlemechs to support the League, the AML's willingness to sell material and work with mercenaries means the Night Gyr is very likely to end up in the hands of non-clan mech warriors. Perhaps that's good news for some of my viewers. Though records become spotty concerning the Night Gyr's impact on recent events, there was one notable incident in March of 3150 when the Jade Falcons were forced into a fighting withdrawal from the former Republic planet Sky when 3 frontline clusters of the Wolves decided the planet deserved new management. In reality, it was an attempt by Alaric to lure Malvina into overcommitting her forces in defense of a planet in an attempt to take out Alaric. It turned out to be a trick, as Alaric wasn't even in the Sky system at the time. As always, Clan Wolf wins, and the Jade Falcons were manipulated like small children. Good times. We could get into it at a future date, but to get back on track, during the fighting withdrawal, a pair of Falcon mech warriors piloting Night Gyrs played a pivotal role in protecting Sakon Ryan Pride from a star of wolves from the Night Wolf Guard Striker cluster, who were attempting to cut off the retreat and eliminate the Jade Falcon's second-in-command. Standing firm and refusing to give ground, the Night Gyrs created a roadblock of lasers and autocannon fire which delayed the wolves for long enough for the Sakon to make his escape. Surprisingly, they actually destroyed an entire onrushing star that was trying to blow past them before being ultimately overwhelmed by others. Adam cursed his hesitation and fired his medium lasers at point-blank range into the side of the clan machine. The ruby-red spears of light energy seared into the right arm and torso of the Night Gyr before its pilot could focus his attention to him. A wave of heat rose in Adam's cockpit. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to remind Adam to check that he wasn't building up too much heat. He took a step backward and then began moving along the hillside to get enough room to employ his Gauss rifles. The Night Gyr fired a dozen streak short-range missiles at him, most of which hit, twisting armor and shaking his Thunderhawk violently. Operation Audacity by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Now, before we squawk on, I did want to take a crack at coming up with my totally non-canon and unofficial Night Gyr configuration. My goal for the MF config was to create a solid generalist machine which could be dangerous at all ranges, but also mitigate the speed disadvantage. Starting with the longest range weapon and moving in, the right arm is dominated by a Hyper Assault Gauss Rifle 20, fed by 2 tons of ammunition in the right torso. That limb was given Case 2 to protect the mech from any Gauss-related explosions. Joining the fray at 20 hexes, 2 large pulse lasers set into the left arm provided their accurate and powerful fire. There weren't any dedicated mid-range weapons, but all 3 of the longer-range weapons continue to be significant threats at 16 and 14 hexes respectively. Starting at 12 hexes, the twin streak SRM-6 launchers split between the side torsos can cause significant damage if they lock onto a target. Both launchers feed from a single ton of Case 2 protected ammunition in the right torso. Aiding in the short range, an emotional support medium pulse laser sits in the open head critical location. The last 2 pieces of equipment are there to extend the life of the mech. The first is a center torso mounted supercharger which boosts the running speed from 6 to 8 hexes when needed, and the second was a laser anti-missile system in the left torso. I went with the laser AMS as a nod to the mech's origins with those laser heatsinks. I do appreciate a good light show. With 2 additional heatsinks, the MF config can fire all of the long-range weapons while on the run and not build up heat, but it's not so oversynced that some heat management isn't necessary once the streaks, MPL, and even the LAMS comes into play. Fun at all ranges and sturdy enough to put up a good fight, I think the Night Gyr MF highlights the power and utility of the battle mech, though I'm curious what you think. If you would like to take the MF config out for a run, I've included both the record sheet and the Alpha Strike card in the Dropbox link in the video notes below. Let me know how it performs. Star Captain Marv Rorschach of Gamma Galaxy's Jade Falcon Guards angled his Night Gyr around the narrow avenue Emile Zola near the monorail line, catching a Republic Lament before it could duck back under cover behind the library. He unleashed his twin ER particle projection cannons and ultra-auto cannons simultaneously at his foe. The flash of the PPCs in the early morning light caught the right arm of the Lament, blasting it off in a shower of sparks and smoke. The autocannon rounds tore into the corner of the library as the Republic Mechwarrior finally got to cover. Smoke rolled over Geneva from 100 different fires throughout the city. Hour of the Wolf by Blaine Lee Pardoe. So why do we love the Night Gyr? This is a super easy one to answer, and for long-time viewers, my response probably won't come as a surprise. Nature loves a generalist, and while the Night Gyr's less powerful engine and resulting lower speed does push it away from center a little bit, it's not enough to seriously hobble the design if used outside of expected conditions. The increase in pod space, as well as the jump jets and its good number of critical locations, allows the Night Gyr to bring significant fire into play when it does eventually get where it's going. The overall look of the mech is intimidating, and those football-style shoulder pads make it look like it's heavier than its 75 tons. Good intimidation factor there. Most of the official configurations are functional and make sense in the role in which they were intended, and even those that don't grab you by the collar would still leave an impression. Though it arrived in 3052, I've always personally grouped the Night Gyr in with mechs that tended to arrive later in that decade. I think it fits much more easily into the group of Gyr Falcons and Hero Falcons rather than the initial set of Invasion Omnimechs. I'm curious what you think about our friend the Night Gyr. Is there a configuration that you think is the mech in its ideal form? Have you had luck with it on the tabletop? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a friendly comment. Or even an unfriendly comment if you want. It's okay, you won't hurt my feelings. All of those things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi or a YouTube channel membership is a great way to help ensure the nonsense keeps flowing. Just a couple of bucks a month can make a big difference. I can't do this without you, and I appreciate it. If you would like to join the nonsense on the MechFrog Discord server, we'd love to see you. I've included a link to the server in the video notes. It's the best way to find out what's coming up next week, talk to BattleTech fans, share your awesome mech paint jobs, or otherwise hang out with some pretty awesome people. With that, I'll say have a great week, take care, please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.